here's something you should know. Whoa, baby, whoa.
Hey guys, welcome to the Project Studio. My name's Nicholas Dombrain. In this video we are looking at mastering and how to get your pre-master tweaked nicely for the most favourable results. If you want the best, it is very important to get a few things right with your track or your pre-master before you send it off to be mastered. It really is a case of easy when you know how. Or, even if you intend to master the track yourself, these steps will prove invaluable in getting a professional sound. It is ever surprising at Zeitgeist Mastering how many unsatisfactory or problematic files get sent in. Sometimes even the most experienced mix engineers leave limiters or effects on the stereo bus when bouncing. So this really goes to show that we all make mistakes sometimes. I spend a lot of time sending emails back and forth to clients explaining the necessary steps for optimum results. So this video should be used as a guide and will clarify just what is the best way to prepare your song or track for mastering. I will cover the common mistakes, discuss how to fix them, and tell you what we, the mastering engineers, want. Okay, so let's now take a look at this in more detail at the main points and tips. I've broken it up into 9 main points, or tips if you like. First one. Make sure that there are no effects on your master bus when you bounce or export. This means remove any master bus compression, limiting or equalization from your master channel. It is common for people to mix into a limiter or a compressor on the stereo bus, but under no circumstances should there be a limiter on your 2 bus when you export. This is a big no-no. And it's devastating when we see this done because it generally means there's very little headroom and there's not much we can do with the audio. Now, it does cause some controversy between mix engineers and mastering engineers alike, but as the Motown legend Bob Olsson says, I've found that every time you process an audio signal, it becomes more fragile. Processing is an important part of your work. However, the secret to great sound is often doing the processing right the first time. As well said, and a great quote to include here. So yeah, it's a debate between some mix engineers whether you should mix into a 2-bus compressor. I personally don't like that idea, but I'm obviously a mastering engineer. While your limiter may sound good to you on your master bus, chances are that any processing done by a mastering specific studio will be of higher quality and more suited to this task. Tonal quality is sacrificed when compressors are placed on the master bus. Also, if your track is already being processed, then you don't leave any or much room for the superior mastering processing to do its thing. I mean, a $10,000 compressor is not much good if the track is already compressed to the limit, as it simply will have no dynamic range to do its thing. Furthermore, I really advise against mixing with the dynamic processing on the master bus until you are really happy with your mix, if ever. I know it's hard, but a great mixdown will sound amazing when it does have the final processing applied to it, but on the other side of the coin, a bad mix will practically never sound amazing, so I cannot stress the importance of getting everything just right in your mix before you even consider the mastering. I really love and relate to the saying that goes, "You can't polish a turd," as it sums up a lot in this game. The mastering processing should never be a replacement for a mixed down that is lacking. If you are expecting the mastering process to automatically make your track sound like something from U2 or Trent Muller or perhaps the Chemical Brothers, then you must keep in mind that these guys use quality from beginning to end. Each process is amazing. A combination of high quality audio, decent processing, and an overall technically balanced mix will yield fantastic results. Also keep in mind that mastering is a final process, and changes to the mixdown cannot be made once you have submitted your pre-master to the mastering engineer. On this note though, if you intend to use Zeitgeist Mastering and are worried about something, please do send us your mix down and we will be happy to let you know if there are any major problems with it. You can get a communication going and perhaps this will help you. A real benefit of having a regular mastering engineer is that you can develop a relationship to get your mixes better over time. Another set of ears or monitors certainly always helps with the process. The last thing to add here is that if you really love a specific effect on the master bus of your track and think that without it the track is really missing something, happens quite often, then send your mastering engineer 2 versions. Clearly label them as the effects mix and the no effects mix, or something like this, so that your mastering engineer knows clearly which one has the effects, and you'll obviously tell him what those effects are or what it is. For example, you may have a fancy reverb on your master that is really part of the timbre of the track. In this case, your mastering engineer would benefit from hearing this to understand the sound you are after. So just make a note if you do this. Our second major point for pre-mastering here, point number 2, is make sure that the level of your track peaks somewhere between -6 and -3 decibels. As a guide, as I sort of talked about before, you really want to leave some headroom on your track so that the superior mastering processing has some room to do its thing. So please make sure that your track peaks at a maximum of -3 decibels. We can easily monitor this in any digital audio workstation by looking at the figures on the master channel when we play through the track. Sometimes this needs to be clicked to reset it. This figure is the peak level of your audio. This has nothing to do with the average or RMS level, so also keep that in mind. This is something I'll go on to cover in the video series, the mastering video series in the future. Now remember that in a digital realm, we can only work to 0 decibels. And after this, we are in the clipping land of darkness where I prefer to chew on tinfoil because it seems like a better option. Now, for us, there is nothing worse than getting a track that is already slammed for mastering, already compressed and really taken the life out of it, as there is very, very little that we can do. So this is the bottom line of points 1 and 2. But do not just lower the master bus to achieve this. This brings me to point 3. Point 3, if the peak level of your track is higher than -3 decibels, it is best to reduce each track's level rather than to just drop the master fader. Now, when I say each track, I mean each track in your project, each single track. Now this may sound a bit strange and I can hear you asking why. What difference does it make? Well, without getting too complicated, reducing the master fader alone will add slight mathematical inaccuracies to the sound, basically because of the intricacies of the programming. If you are keen to learn more, check out floating point processing. So the best thing to do is to leave your master fader at 0 decibels, like so. Then we can go on and select each fader and bring down individual levels of the tracks to achieve a lower peak level. We can select all tracks at once and do this. This way we can keep the ratios of the mix intact. Now I understand this may be a bit of a pain if you have a lot of track volume automations, but I can only say that it is worth it, so keep it in mind. Moving on to point 4. Point 4 is eliminate any unwanted noise within your mix. Mastering will make your song louder and bring out any imperfections that are not so noticeable on the mix. But remember, if you can just hear it in the mix, you will definitely hear it in the master. Try to move any pops, clicks, background noise, and anything else that is bothersome or unwanted. Of course, mastering engineers can remove artifacts and common noise problems, but you'll get a much better master if you fix it in the mix. Point number 5, try to keep your mix clean and dynamic. May sound obvious, but reduce frequency build-ups that are not the main focus of the song. Frequency build-ups can make a mix sound unclear or muddy. Using a low-pass filter for instruments or vocals that have little low-frequency content helps reduce these build-ups. Leave your mix dynamic. Overuse of compression can take the life out of a song. This makes it difficult for the mastering engineer to create a great sounding master. It's best to leave the mixes as dynamic as possible. Doing so gives the mastering engineer space to sculpt the dynamics to create the best possible master. Obviously, if you're doing a club dance track, you will use quite a lot of compression, and this is understandable. Point number 6. Leave some silence at the beginning and at the end of your track. By this I mean in the vicinity of 2 to 8 bars, just so that there's some definite silence. This is wise to make sure that your mastering engineer can apply precise fades, and also so that any decaying sounds with reverb or delay tails have a chance to completely finish or decay. Some room before the first transient or hit in the track, first sound you hear in your track, is a very appreciated thing when mastering. It can also be a good way of ensuring that you avoid any CPU related clicks or pops that sometimes occur when bouncing a processor heavy project. Moving to point number 7. Bounce your track in the format that you worked in. What do I mean by this? Well, what format do I bounce or export in is perhaps the most common question. Now, many formats are accepted by mastering engineers, but it is really quite simple. The best format for you to bounce your track in is the same format as what your project in, or what your audio was mainly recorded in. If you use 24-bit samples, or if you record a 24-bit, then you should bounce a 24-bit. We highly recommend not working lower than 24-bit, as audio quality is noticeably different at 16-bit. Logic does not support 32-bit floating point, but Ableton Live, Cubase and Pro Tools certainly do, so 32-bit is an option there. 44.1 kHz and 24-bit, generally for most people, will suffice, but 48 kHz is also common. Sometimes even 32-bit 192 kHz, but this is perhaps a little excessive for most people, as many argue that human ears are really not able to hear the very subtle improvements at this ultra high quality. Also, there is little point in this if your room and or monitors are not also of extremely high quality. Keep in mind that MP3 is an absolute no-no, as it is compressed audio and a lot of vital information is missing, so please don't send in MP3s. In case you're wondering, here is a list of accepted file formats. There are many different file formats here. WAV, AIF, Sound Designer 2, FLAC, many different formats. Also the word lengths supported. So 16, 20, 24 and 32 bit word lengths are supported. But as I said, 44.1 kHz, 24 bits is by far the most common and is for the most part absolutely adequate. So don't stress if 24-bit is what you have and you think possibly you should have more. Now, point number 8. Be sure not to normalise or to apply any dither when you bounce or export. Dither is best applied at the very final process, when the bitrate is being reduced to 16-bit for CD standard. If this is done before this, audio quality will be lost and certain anomalies in the audio are likely to be introduced. So again, leave this bit to your mastering engineer. If you bounce in the format that your project is in, no dither needs to be applied anyway, so you shouldn't have to worry about this. Now, normalising is a function on a lot of DAWs, digital audio workstations. and it brings the audio to a peak level to 0 decibels. So this is certainly not something that you want to do, as there will be no headroom left for your mastering engineer. So we're up to the last point now, point number 9. Think about realistic and relevant reference tracks that you might be able to suggest to your mastering engineer. An experienced mastering engineer will more often than not know fairly quickly what sort of sound you are after, but if you have relevant and similar artists in mind that you aspire to sound like, it is always of benefit to mention this to your mastering engineer. It really is very helpful. Having said this, if you are a garage band that has recorded your band on a few cheap microphones and preamps, there is little point in using Tool or Pink Floyd as a reference, as the difference will be so vast. Being thorough and making notes is always helpful, and mastering engineers are always happy to hear what you want, but it is of course up to you. Again, it is paramount that you're really happy with your own mixdown before the mastering process. Make sure that it sounds like what you want and reference it next to what you want also. This will really help, I promise you. So this pretty much sums it up. That's our 9 points. If you follow these steps, your mastering engineer will be very happy with you and you'll get the best results. So it really works for both parties really well. Thanks for watching, and be sure to go to our website for any further inquiries. If you're keen to learn more about mastering audio itself, I've completed a course called Mastering Now, the Complete Guide, and that's available at musiccourses.com. I'll leave some links with the video here. For now, thanks a lot for watching, and I hope we'll be in contact in the future. Ciao.